Hey girlfriends, it's me, Lauren Hope, aka Lolo of Good Girl Chronicles, blogger, motivational speaker, certified peer recovery specialist, dog mom, lover of Dwayne Johnson, and all around fabulous. Girls, today as I told you on the other vlogs, I want to start talking about sex. And that's really hard because I think that women are kind of conditioned and reared to not talk about sex. But the challenge that I'm finding in my 30s is that because we haven't had these conversations, there's so much misinformation out there. Um, there's so much hindrance that we're all experiencing in our relationships because of that. One of the things that has been on my heart to really talk about is soul ties. I've been raised Southern Baptist, so there was definitely always the message that if you had sex outside of marriage, like you were kind of damaged goods, like, why is the man gonna buy the cow when he's already had the milk? Is that how that expression goes? Is it? Yeah, something like that. But very condemning. So when I decided to have sex outside of marriage, I never ever shook the shame around making that decision. And then as I grew in Christianity and kept going to different churches and having different experiences, I started to hear about something called soul ties. This idea that every time you have sex with somebody, you form a soul connection. I remember watching a couple of sermons about it, and like the pastor was like tied and bound, and he presented this imagery that like every person you've had sex with, you're bound to like this. And I'm like, it's very condemning. And so I recently had an experience where I was hosting an all-female Galentine's Day party where we were talking about sex and relationships, and I thought it was going to be super cool and awesome, but we actually were double booked in the space that we were in, and there were some preachers there that were kind of condemning about how open we were talking about sex, and that is really what has encouraged me to have this discussion about soul ties. So in the research that I've done, I looked at this really basic dictionary, urban dictionary description of soul ties. It's described as a spiritual, emotional connection you have to someone after being intimate with them, usually engaging in sexual intercourse, to the point that when you get rid of them from your mind and your life, even when you're not far away from them or out of their presence, you still feel that they are part of you and you're a part of them. So this idea that you're always connected. And the hard thing is, in Christian spaces, they talk about those soul ties, but they don't talk about breaking them. And if you are a woman who's single and maybe had a lot of sexual experiences, that can feel very condemning. So I wanted to get the advice of somebody who talks about sacred sex, reclaiming your sexual energy, and what that looks like. So I sat down and interviewed fire performer, DJ, seasoned yoga teacher, relationship and health coach Neve Grace. And that is exactly what we're going to talk about. Listen into our interview. Introduce you. And I was reading your bio on your website. I'm going to just skim over some of your amazing titles. It's not even going to cover everything. So this is Neve Grace. She's a fire performer, a DJ, a seasoned yoga teacher, a relationships and health coach. And again, that's just skimming the surface. So tell me about you and what it is that you do.
Yeah, so I do a lot of things, but mostly I'm focused on my health program and my relationship program online. But of course, if I get a chance to spin fire or DJ for someone, I love doing that because that's just fun to get out there and connect. And I miss connecting right now. So, but yeah, it's been a journey as far as relationships go. I've definitely had some ups and downs and given my energy and heart away and had to reclaim that. So I'm really excited about this conversation, and hopefully I can shed some light or help anyone or spark some new ideas or whatever comes from it. So yeah.
You and me both about like giving energy in your heart to the people that maybe wasn't the best place to place that energy. And so that's why I'm so glad to be speaking with you. But pause. I feel like fire performer. How does one become a fire performer?
That's a pretty good story, actually. So I was somewhere where people were camping, and I was walking back to my camp area, and there was a couple. They weren't wearing a lot of clothes, and they were spinning fire. They had 2 chains with balls, and they were spinning fire like with each other. And it was this beautiful, and you could feel their energy. Like maybe they just started dating or something. I don't know, but probably not, because it, to spin fire with someone takes a little bit of coordination. But it was like, I was blown away. I was like, that is so beautiful. And I love fire. Like, it's one of the elements that I totally resonate with. I'm like, yes, fire energy, like get it done, passion, right? And so they handed it to me when it was like dim, like starting to go out, and they were like, hey, want to try? And I was like, yeah. And I kind of just went a couple circles. And the next day, or that week, I like ordered everything, made my own set, and started practicing. And that was over 10 years ago now.
Oh, wow.
So I've been spinning fire for a long time. I actually interviewed to do it as a street performer in Virginia Beach. And they said I needed a band or like some other spinners in order for them to hire me. Like, I couldn't be a solo show. And I was like, oh, but they were like, you're good. You're talented enough. You just need like more people involved. So I was kind of bummed about that, but I am spinning this summer at the yoga festival. So I'm pretty excited about that.
So fire dancer, DJ, but I'm really interested in what inspired you to be a yoga teacher and a relationships and health coach. Like, what inspired you to move into that work?
Yeah, really. So I love these questions. This is so fun. Thank you. Thank you for asking. Yeah. So for yoga, I had just moved down here. I was looking for, I loved yoga, but I basically needed to do yoga every day because I had back pain. And so my mom was like, why don't you just become a teacher? I was a swim teacher and a dance teacher. She was like, you already do teach a lot of physical things. She's like, why don't you just teach yoga? Because you're going to have to do it. And I was like, yeah, it's true. So I went ahead and got my certification. And back then there was only like 4 yoga studios around here. I mean, there wasn't that many. Now there's tons, which is great. And so it was really to heal my back pain. It was for physical reasons. However, I was still, practicing Christian, not really, a little nervous about the philosophy and the spiritual part of yoga. Like, I didn't know anything about it. And going through, it really allowed me to consider other things that I had never considered or been exposed to, which really changed my spirituality, because I started to feel different things, like when I was meditating, and it kind of felt like when I was worshiping God at church. And I started to have these energy experiences and different words to put to them, which was really valuable. And I started to notice, like, started studying other religions and just trying to figure out, like, okay, what are some of the common things that are in every religion? And, love and light are always talked about in any religion. And so it just started to like open my mind a lot for the spirituality aspect. And I'm still, I still claim Christianity because, like, I love Jesus and I love God, and like that, I don't think that can go anywhere. You know what I mean? Like, once he's in your heart, like, and so I think it's cool because the yoga new age community is all about Christ consciousness. Like, that's what they talk about. And I'm like, yeah, I'm all about Christ consciousness. Like, let's love and serve. I'm all about it. So it's just kind of cool how yoga came. And that was 2012. So it was pretty like energetically potent time, I think.
That, like, you just gave so much value. So this is how I say, I subscribe to being a Christian, but I've had a lot of really interesting spiritual experiences, and one of which was at a Buddhist temple. And I like stumbled upon this temple, and I was just like kind of scared, like you were saying about yoga, like anything that seemed like it challenged my Christian like way of thinking. And I met this monk, and I was like, hey, well, I'm a Christian. I almost was like afraid to go into the temple, as if like, hey, I don't know if this is kosher, like on my end or your end. And he was just like, honestly, Buddhists, now this is what this monk told me. He said, Buddhists are not trying to get you to denounce Christ. He said, honestly, we're on a journey to peace, and the practices that we do show you like how to come to a place of peace. And he invited me to come and meditate with him. And I was like, so like nervous. And I was like, I don't know what to do. And he said, honestly, think of your favorite Bible verse and keep reciting that in your head. And that was life-changing for me, like as far as opening me up to different spiritual experiences. And like ultimately I believe that God is love, and he wants us to know how to love him first, and then we love people. And so I always just try to come from a place of love. So I just love everything you said about how you came to yoga and what you do.
Yeah, I think there's just a lot of space now with technology and with information that it's, I don't know, it's easier to find value and things from other places that bring you closer to God that maybe traditionally weren't necessarily like thumbed up, if you will, right? And so it's yeah, it's just I love bhakti yoga. I don't know if you know what bhakti yoga is, but
No.
it's love and devotion to the divine. And that is my favorite yoga, because it's like you can worship whatever is near and dear to your heart, which for me is God. So I'm like worshiping God and doing yoga, and it's just like, yeah, it's so I love that. And I feel just as much powerful energy. Like I was one of those girls in church that would like sing and dance down the aisle, you know, and just be like, from heaven to earth,
I love it.
whatever, like you showed the way. And I was like, people would look at me like, oh man, she like really loves God, and that didn't go anywhere. Like, just because I practice yoga, like doesn't mean I don't love the divine. And so it's interesting too when I work with people that don't believe anything. Like I'm like, well, there's like there's still divinity, and there's still like, so it's interesting kind of being in this open-minded place with it. So
No, that experience at the Buddhist temple like expanded my mind, because like even like when I was in the temple, I was reading all these tenets of Buddhism, and a lot of them were similar to a lot of principles that are taught in Christianity. So I just always love people that have openness to spirituality, and things like meditating and stuff like that is drawing me closer to God. So that's so beautiful. I want to give a little setup about why I wanted to talk with you.
okay.
So my business, Good Girl Chronicles, what I started to realize and what I was sharing, most women were gravitated to talking about sex, relationships, and things like that, but like in secret. When I started blogging about like my relationships and, messy love life and sex life, those were the ones that women responded to. And something kept coming up, this idea of having soul ties. And so it taught me that a lot of people have been taught this thing about soul ties. And so my thought was to start gathering women together in small, intimate places to have these conversations about sex. And like maybe we would bring in an expert so we all learn and grow. One of those was when I invited you to Galentine's Day.
So fun. Thank you.
It was so great. It was so great. It was like, February 13th, the day before Valentine's Day, celebrating our girlfriends. We had such a good time. So interestingly, Neve, I didn't realize we were double booked that day. I reserved a restaurant room. So it's us and all of these girls, and we're ready to talk about love, sex, and relationships. And no shade, there was a group of pastors, women, who also had reserved that space. And as they heard us talking about sex, they were becoming visibly uncomfortable. And one of the ladies rose up. I felt her response was a little condemning, as if to say that because she was married and she waited and had sex the right way, that she was somehow purer or better off than some other women that hadn't. Now that could be me projecting, but I did get a little defensive. I was just like, and then she mentioned something about soul ties. And then I was just like, oh my gosh. So I've had that on my heart to talk about for some time. And I remember you saying to me, I would love to talk to you about that. We whispered, because it was tense for a little bit.
It was a little tense. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the hard thing around sex, is that like there's so much tension and shame and guilt that I'm learning we don't grow from that, as I'm sure you know. So I wanted to talk to you about that. So sorry, my setup was so long. So I wanted to first off ask how you got into talking about sex and relationships in your business, like through coaching.
How I got into it. Well, How did I get into it? I mean, I had a really, really, I'm going to plug my computer in. Hold on. I had a really, really powerful experience with someone intimately where I felt like I experienced God, like rays of like gold white light around me, like what people say when they die kind of thing. Like that's how it felt. Like it's such a hard thing to try to describe to people, but it felt like I was like bathed in God bliss, but I was with another person. And I was like, you know, curse word, curse word, curse word. Like, how could this, like, what? Insert your favorite curse word here. Like, holy crap. Like, how, like, what is this? Like, how is this possible? Why was I not taught about this? Like, yes, I understand that sex is sacred, or at least that's what it should be, or whatever. But I had no idea that that kind of experience was possible. And so it kind of sent me on this journey of studying different ancient sacred sex traditions and trying to figure out like how to recreate that. So I had different partners that I practiced and try different things with. And then I created a course to basically be able to there's so much healing and so much stuff you have to do to like get to that point with someone that I realized I couldn't just teach a sacred sex course because people, you know, it's very intimate and it requires a lot of things. So like there's a lot of steps. And so that's kind of how the at least the pilot of my course was born, was like, okay, this is what I did, and then this is what I did, and this is what I had to get over, and all these different pieces. So really it was that experience. And that was 2013 where I had that experience, and it was just like, oh my gosh, more people need to experience this. Like, why are you human on the planet right now and not doing this? Like, I need to share this, you know. And it was very on my heart, and I did it. I even did a Dharma meditation. Dharma, for anyone that's not familiar, is like your purpose right now, or like one of the things that you're supposed to be doing. And it was like sacred sex, sacred sex. And I just felt like, okay, I feel really blessed by God, by the divine, to be sharing about how sex can be sacred. And, you know, I've talked to a lot of people about it, and a lot of people don't even have that concept. Even Christians, like even people that are saying that sex is sacred, it's like reserved for marriage, don't understand like it's still not just like a physical thing, or it can be more than just a physical thing or a physical and emotional thing. It can be a spiritual thing. And so it's been really enlightening to first to just learn and study and practice all this stuff, and then to be able to start sharing it with people. And I wish it was easier to just drop into that bliss place with people, but it's not the easiest thing to accomplish, but probably one of the peak moments of my life so far. I mean, well, now, am I soul tied to that person?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, there's a soul tie there. And at the same time, because of the way that it was different, which is one of the things I wanted to share, because that energy felt like unconditional love. And when I walked away from that moment, or that session, or whatever you want to call it, when I left that space, all I felt was more love for myself, more love for that person, and more love for the whole world. Like literally days of just wanting to hug and kiss everyone, not like, you know, romantically kiss everyone, but just like, it was so palpable how that energy had affected me. And yeah, I don't know, you probably have questions.
No, honestly, I first just want to say I have not had that type of sex in my life.
Yeah.
I really haven't. And that's like beautiful and inspiring. And I definitely think if you're up for it, a follow-up on sacred sex, like another interview. And I'd love to direct people on how they can engage with that course if you're still offering that, because that sounds freaking amazing. So as I was researching soul ties, it seems like soul ties does come primarily from the Christian space. I think I read somewhere that it comes from this scripture in 2 Corinthians, which talks about when you, there's this idea of when you consummate a marriage, like, physically to become one. And then Corinthians talks about, actually, I might have it on my desktop, because I think people are told this as they grow up, like, oh, you're going to form a soul tie, girl, but they don't explain what it is. The hard thing is the imagery that a lot of people get in church is that, and I've even seen a couple of sermons this way, it's this imagery of you being bound like this with ropes, right? Or like you're like somebody standing behind you and you're both bound. And this total thing that like everyone you ever slept with, you're wrapped in this bondage wedge. Think about how condemning that is.
That's not cool.
No. And so yeah, the research that I did on this, it come I think they said it comes from Second Corinthians, about when people use the term soul tie, what they usually mean is in the spiritual realm, our souls are united to someone, and that tie is binding us to a person who we don't want to be bound to, and is hampering our efforts to move forward in life. But I've also learned very positively, there are some Christian people, thought leaders, who are trying to push against the thought that once you have sex with somebody, there's a tie that can never be broken. And it's always seen in a negative connotation. So I wanted to ask your thoughts, I guess, from that perspective. Like, what do you think of this whole condemning description of soul ties?
Well, I think it there's a couple things I want to share, but one is it goes back to like the only thing that I struggle with Christianity is the like I am unworthy, like the unworthy aspect. And I feel like that's very much linked to the soul tie perspective. I actually talked to one of my friends who is a Christian / into the spiritual kind of perspective. And he recommended the Elijah Task. The Elijah Task is the name of the book by John Stanford, and that's like it's a Christian author, but it's a more spiritual perspective on soul ties for anyone that would benefit. So I just wanted to bring that into the conversation. And he also went ahead and told me that he had done a couple Christian soul tie releasing things with pastors, and kind of told me about it, because I was like, okay, I don't know if I totally get this soul tie and the perspective. And he said it was kind of like he didn't feel super great about those situations. Now, from the yoga and the Ayurvedic perspective, I mean, listen, if you have sex with someone, then you energetically connect with them. You know, it's the closest that two people can physically get to one another, right? And so when that happens, there's definitely like connections are made. Now, if there's more emotion or there's more, I feel like the connection can vary. Like there's levels of how much that affects you. And also one thing I've noticed is with the sacred sex or the spiritual stuff, whenever I've practiced strictly like a spiritual, meditative, sexual experience with someone, I only feel love for them, and I don't feel like they've taken anything from me, which I find very interesting. Whereas other people from when I was younger, I felt like, okay, they do have some of my energy, and I was telling you this, I think at the event, it's in part of my course, is there's this meditation where you call back the energy. And I think that's like and I can share more about that in a moment if you want, but I think that is kind of a more holistic, less condemning version of what Christianity does. Because when I was talking to my friend, he said it's basically like the Christian perspective is you renounce the other person, you repent of your sin, you get forgiveness from God, you take back whatever that you gave to them, and then you can be, basically healed through Jesus. Right. And I don't think that that's all bad at all. I just think that the condemning piece, like I said, the unworthy or like the bound, like you were talking about the ropes, like that's the part where it's like, whoa. Who is the church trying to control? Like what is that about? Like, hold on a second. So yeah, the practice that I teach people is it's a meditation where you write down the names of the people or person that you felt like maybe still has your energy, or that you gave energy to, that you didn't really want to do that. And you could do like everyone that you ever slept with if you want. I mean, it's totally up to you. And then what you do is you meditate and you visualize that the person sitting right in front of you, and you're energetically, when you breathe in, you're bringing your own energy back, and when you breathe out, you're releasing energy to them, and that's going into your heart and into your womb, into your womb space. And I've done this practice. I do it every time I lead the course anyway, because it's not even a course, it's a program, but whenever I do stuff with people, I do it too. Like, and so I've done it a lot, and it can bring up a lot of emotions. It's a pretty powerful meditation, and I feel more whole every time I do it. Like, it's kind of interesting. And there's certain people, I like everyone that I did that sacred practice with, which isn't that many, but it's a couple people. I haven't tried to call back that energy, because I don't feel like they took anything,
right,
or that I gave anything away, because it was about us being one and celebrating life. Like, I don't know, it's just very different than screwing, which is still fun.
It's so right. It's so different. You mentioned something called, and I hope I'm pronouncing it right, the Ayurveda perspective.
Ayurveda.
Yeah. So what does that mean?
Okay, so I'm glad you asked, because that's what my health course is all about. My health course is Ayurvedic. So Ayurveda is the sister science of yoga. It's how to live a healthy yogic lifestyle. And in Ayurveda, there's so many healing tools. Like, this meditation would be one that it kind of comes from Ayurveda perspective. There's ancestral healing, which I think everyone on the planet needs to be doing right now. That's very Ayurvedic. And it's all about living in rhythm with your body and with nature. And if we do a follow-up, I'll share, because there's a lot of things Ayurveda says that are healthy, like more ideal to do sexually. And one is, of course, practicing sex as a meditation and as a sacred practice. For me, trying this with multiple men, guys don't always want to be like super sacred about it, or, you know what I mean? Like, that's not always what they're into. And so it's, I think, finding that balance when you do have a partner of like, okay, let's be like primal animals. Okay, now we did that. Next time, let's have some sacredness, and kind of starting to experiment with that energy and noticing the difference. Like, for me, if it's totally primal, I'm going to feel a little used.
Right. That's right.
I just do. Like, I just feel a little bit icky. Like, if there's not enough eye contact or intimacy or touching or loving, then it's like, ugh, what was that? That wasn't, it just feels like very low vibrational.
Mm-hmm. And honestly, so that sounds like, if I'm hearing you right, the basis for how you do a lot of this, helping people reclaim their energy and things like that, is from that space. And I definitely would like to do a follow-up interview about sacred sex, because I think there's so much there, and that's a totally different thing than I think most people think about. So I've read some things about breaking soul ties. As your friend was saying, there's a lot of ritualistic things about it. I've read that, like, you have to get rid of every picture you have of that person. You have to burn and get rid of gifts, and like pray and repent. And I think, from my perspective, the trouble with that is, what if you do all of those things and inside you still feel longing or hurt or whatever? Like, the way that some people describe the soul tie is like a ripping of the flesh.
Oof.
Isn't that right? So it sounds like, I remember in our setup questions, I asked you, what do you think about breaking soul ties? Do you think that they could be broken? And you had such a great response to it. So I'd love to hear, do you think they can be broken?
Yeah, I think what I said was that I wouldn't use the word broken. Is that not right, what I said? Yeah, I said that I think they can be released and like thanked and let go of. Like, even with, if your partner or your ex gave you something that you like, you don't want to just throw it out. That's not the greatest energy. You want to thank that person, and then release it. It's like a different energy. Do you feel that when I say it, versus like, get out of here? It's like, this served a purpose. And if you're like, for me, like, I trust that, all is well. God's in control of everything, and everything happens for a reason. So if I made love with someone and then I felt abused or used or whatever, there was something there that I was supposed to learn. Maybe not to do it again, maybe something else. But either way, that energy, I think, needs to be blessed and thanked and released versus just like ripped flesh.
No, it does sound so painful. And I found, like, honestly, this is how I know I wanted to interview you. When I reached out and asked and read your responses, I felt a lot of hope in your responses, because I just grew up with this, like, yeah, girl, you screwed. You got soul ties, you screwed. And then if you want to do it, but you really ain't good even after you've done all these things. And I definitely am moving into a phase of life where I feel like I need to be more intentional about the people that I let get close to me physically, intimately, emotionally, intimately, um, because it just carries so much. So
Yeah, definitely. And I think that some of the advice from yoga and Ayurveda about sacred sex will help you create those safe boundaries and guidelines for sure, because they have helped me a lot. And I think I mentioned this in my group earlier, but I had horrible boundaries and I didn't really understand like my own standards and I didn't value myself. And as I started to value myself more and create more boundaries, like it really made it easier for me to connect. And so like every relationship since like the one that was pretty bad, I would say, it's just like gotten healthier and sweeter and more intimate. And it's just like this really nice progression. And it's because I've been doing my own inner work and setting those boundaries and actually like really valuing myself and loving myself. I mean, I used to like when I was younger, I would just like be like, oh yeah, this is fun. Like I definitely had one or two nightstands, like
yeah,
not really proud of that. But I did. And that's where it felt like icky
right.
and where I felt very guilty, and like, oh man, I'm ruined now. Like nobody will want me or my energy's corrupted. And that's not the case. And I think that it's some people that you are soul tied to, or some people that you feel this like there's still this lingering connection. You do that. I've done that meditation with the same individuals a couple times, and every time it feels like I feel more whole. So I think it's a process. I don't
Yeah.
think it's like one and done.
I honestly feel like I'm ready to start doing that process. It's funny, I vlog a lot about my dating life and I watch those vlogs. So it's not just for like other people. And I keep saying, describing the same type of man, like in this really bad pattern of dating men that like don't respect or honor me. And I think that I need to release some things. I love you hearing you say that like it just got sweeter and sweeter with every relationship. I hate not ending relationships well or there being bad blood, which is the last one that I was in, bad blood. And so I'm just ready. I know it happens, right?
It
I'm
does.
ready to release some things. That's another reason why I wanted to speak with you. So if people want to do this program with you or get started on this type of journey, how can they get connected with you and get started?
Well, so I would say the first thing is going into the Facebook group, because that is where I'm connecting with people the most often, and where there's free information and resources. Like we're streaming right now into that group. So that group is a great place to connect. And that
Girlfriends, how much value in that talk? I want to have blissful God sex. process. But I definitely want to get you guys connected to Neve if you'd like to. She's in the Hampton Roads area, but she does do a lot of her services virtually. I'm going to put all of the ways you can connect with her in the description below. And I'd like to talk to her in the future about sacred sex and what that looks like. If this was something that really spoke to you, you like this type of this type of content, please hit that subscribe button and the like button. The more likes I get, that's how I kind of know if like this is the content that is valuable to you. And then, yeah, you can connect with me on social media, Instagram, Facebook, Good Girl Chronicles LLC. I'd love for you to comment in on this discussion. I'm thinking of creating a private Facebook group where we can have discussions about things I talk about on the vlog that maybe we wouldn't want to talk about on YouTube. So yeah, if you have a suggestion for a love, sex, relationship vlog or an expert, please comment below and I'll try to make that happen. As we say here at Good Girl Chronicles, I love you. I love God more. See you next time.